Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talk of the Town podcast. This is your host, Matt Brown. We're back for week number 4 of the podcast already. You know you're having fun when 4 weeks have felt like 2 days. I mean, time has just flown by since I started this podcast. It's been crazy. I love it, though. I love the grind on this. I'm just having so much fun. Every day is another day closer to the NFL season. So again, we have so many fun segments, stuff coming up here on this podcast. I'll say one thing for sure, especially going into week 4 of the podcast this week. I feel like, the quality of my videos have definitely gotten better because, obviously, like the first 2 weeks or so I started, which was only 2 weeks ago, I was incredibly nervous. I was still kind of not really knowing how good I was on here. I have people tell me I'm doing great, stuff like that. But of course, just being yourself, sometimes, you doubt yourself and stuff like that. Those little voices in your head do that to you. And that's definitely where I was. But while I feel like, of course, I'm always trying to put out my best quality of content, always, every video is like that. That never changes. I feel like just because now I'm finally getting, seriously comfortable, getting used to doing this. I feel like Friday was my best video when I was talking about Anthony Richardson and the Colts and, that stuff. Again, go back and check it out if you haven't. I feel like that was the best. I felt like I flowed into the video, going into different topics, Again, it takes just getting used to with anything in life. That's why I'm saying it on here. It's because you're experiencing me starting off a career, a career path for me, my dream, something I've always wanted to do. And, again, I said on my first video of the podcast, we're all here to grow together, and I'm letting you guys know my experiences, how I feel on here. So, and one more thing I wanted to say is with the sports memorabilia in the background. I know I mentioned on Friday how I tried doing that. I fiddled around with it a little bit over the weekend. It's just kind of hard because, again, you see the limited space. These are big frames. I need to eventually pull the camera off and show you guys. But like, over my bed back here, I have a big signed Shaq photo, big Dwayne Wade portrait my friend got me for Christmas. Dwayne Wade's one of my favorite NBA players. I have a lot of stuff, a picture with me and Gronk that sign that would look so just badass in the background. That nice Patriots sign my girlfriend got me for Christmas. Like, I have a lot of nice stuff. I just got to figure out a way to put it in the back. Because I think, especially if I hang a sign right here in the background, it just, or on the door right here in the background, it does not look right. Trust me, it does not look right. I don't even know how I do it anyway, because I'm not putting a nail in the door. I don't know. Whatever. But again, I'm working on that for you guys constantly, try to get a really nice background with my sports memorabilia. It's nice stuff. So it'll be there in time. I just need a little bit to really figure it out. I may have to move spaces, whatever it is. I'll figure it out. So let's get into the first topic today. We're going to go over some of this week's preseason games, some of my takeaways. Again, it'll be kind of quick. I've never been a guy to really take the preseason too seriously unless, something major happens or certain players are just playing out of their mind. Like, it's like noticeable, like, man, this guy is playing out of his mind right now. So here's some of my takeaways. Also, 2 ties. I was going to say there's a lot of ties over the weekend. 2 ties in an NFL week is a lot. It's rare to see one. I don't think we've had one in an NFL season in a while. Probably longer than a few years, I think. I don't know when the last one is. You guys remember? Tell me in the comments because I'd like to know. We had the Dolphins and Bears and the Raiders and Seahawks. They both tied in I think it was like 24-24 and 23-23. Again, I think a lot of ties in a week is just, again, we haven't seen a tie in the NFL in a while. So I thought that was kind of interesting, especially the Raiders and Seahawks one. That was a pretty interesting game. I didn't watch too much of the Dolphins and Bears. Again, I didn't watch all the preseason games. I watched every single one of the regular season games in a day, every single one of them. But the preseason, again, you got something to do over the weekend, stuff like that. You're not really tethering yourself to it, even though, this is what I do. But, yeah, trust me, I kept up with all the games. So, like, it's not like I'm just all of a sudden, no, I kept up with them. I just, not quite like the regular season. I think you guys get it. Shedeur and the Browns, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. That's a separate topic I'm going to talk about. The Browns looked good in the score column, and they just look good in general. But they have some controversy again. I'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Bryce Young and T-Mac, they had that drive there for the first couple of drives, and they had that one touchdown drive. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because that made me feel so good, which I already felt good about it anyway, but about my MVP prediction I had a few weeks ago. I'm definitely taking some bash for that with Bryce Young, but people do not understand, the way he was rated coming out of college, the player he was in high school, at Alabama. I'm telling you, Bryce Young, it took him a little time to develop in the NFL. He is here, people. I'm telling you, I'm not saying he's Drew Brees. I'm putting that in the air right now. I'm not saying he's Drew Brees at all, but he is a Drew Brees kind of player. So again, smaller kind of build. Again, he's smaller than Drew Brees, obviously. One of the smaller players, honestly, I've probably ever seen. And again, it doesn't mean he can't play in the league, but, he has to adapt. I think it took him a lot longer to adapt than other players because there's not been a lot of small guys like that, like Bryce Young, who are talented like Bryce Young. A lot of the guys I kind of give up on. I know Russell Wilson's not necessarily the biggest guy in the world, but he's burly. But again, seeing him and T-Mac out there, it was that 29, 30-yard pass, over the shoulder, over the top. It looked good. He had another catch that drive. He would have had a touchdown catch, but again, it was kind of a rookie moment. The timing was off. Even the announcer said it. He turned around a split second sooner, which is, again, in the NFL, you're talking split seconds. He would have had a touchdown, but he even realized. And I said that's going to be a top tier duo. It's not going to be Burrow and Jamar Chase quite yet, or I don't think it'll get to that point. But I think they could be a top notch duo. Again, that made me feel really good about my prediction and actually seeing them, playing and whether it's a preseason game or a game and seeing them look good. T-Mac looked good. So you need Bryce Young. Lions and Falcons. Again, I know this was Thursday? Yeah, Thursday, I believe. I could have talked about it Friday, but I just wanted to say, prayers for the I don't know, I can't remember his name. Sorry. But the Lions player who went down, you hate to see anyone like that, especially competing for a roster spot, whatever it is, just trying to be in the NFL. He'll come back, hopefully, and get another chance. It just sucks for a guy who's really going to compete. Again, it looks like he's okay. Thank goodness, but you just always hate to see stuff like that. Patriots, see it on the shirt here. Patriots blow out the Commanders. Again, anyone who this is your first time watching, I'm a diehard New England Patriots fan, and I live 25 minutes away from Baltimore. So again, I'm surrounded by Ravens fans and Commanders fans. There's a lot of Commanders fans around here too, because again, we're only maybe a little less than an hour away from the stadium, Commander Stadium as well. So seeing them blow out the Commanders felt really good, even though it's the preseason. Again, the cornerback, there was a play in that game where it was a blatant pass interference. He had the man hooked by the arm, and even all the fans and stuff in New England were booing and all that. And then he gets up and starts crying. I'm like, dude, he was down like 27-3 before halftime. I'm like, when it's a preseason game and you're getting blown out and you blatantly just got a pass interference. So again, he even knows if he didn't do that, he was getting torched for like a 40-yard touchdown. So, man, again, it's just stuff like that I watch. Any team, you watch any player kind of like pull your team and they're getting blown out, and it's just like, dude, look at this scoreboard. What was that, like 40? I think the game ended like 48-14 or so. I mean, it was just a blowout. Ben Woolridge looked good. Their third stringer, he looked a lot better than Josh Dobbs. I mean, he was kind of dealing down the field. Josh Dobbs didn't look great. The passer not. And it's just that 1 year he had not the 1 year, like the one game he had with the Vikings where he came in and he was only there for a couple of days and, he's kind of working his magic. He really has not been great, to be honest with you. He has not been great. And Drake May, man, when those starters were in there, I know they were going against the backups. They look poised. Trevion Henderson, his first play, that kickoff return. Oh my gosh, dude, just watching. I was so hyped up here in my living room watching that. I was not even 2 minutes before that happened. I was literally saying, man, I'm so hyped to see Travion Henderson. I think he's been one of the more slept-on players in the draft. People recognize him, but with Amari on Hampton and Judkins getting drafted over him and stuff, obviously people are going to talk about those guys more. But I think Henderson is better than some of those guys. I'm not just saying that because he's a Patriot. I mean, you just watch it. He bursted out of a cannon coming out of that kickoff, man. That made me so happy seeing that. So that was good to see. Again, and if you're the Commanders, I know, they got blown out, but you have Jane Daniels and most of your starters, if any starters not playing. Again, Commanders fans trying to take that serious. I don't take it serious either. Most Patriots fans don't either, to be honest with you. You get a blowout win, you feel good, but, you're not playing any of your starters, so I get it. The 70-yard field goal over the weekend, too. Man. I've always been a guy who's been intrigued by long field goals. Like my dad, whenever there was, Matt Prater would come out to kick a field goal, whoever, Tucker, every single, of course, every weekend, we'd have a Ravens game on in here. I watch all the games. I've red zone, all that. So I watch every single game, but of course with Tucker, I watched, when he made, was it the 66-yard field goal against the Lions to beat them a few years ago? Every time there's a long field goal, I get called out for it. I'm always intrigued by long field goals. I know if that's weird or not, but I just love watching it. Of course, I didn't get to see that one live, but I looked up the video right away when I got the notification for it. And I was just like, a 70-yard field goal. Oh my gosh, man, that was crazy. Yeah, that man has a boot on him because that thing looked good the second he kicked it. Even the announcers were like, "Oh, what? That it looked good the second he kicked it." To be honest with you, it didn't even look like it was going to be short. Then the Giants quarterbacks, Dart, Winston, Wilson, they all look good. They did. They all looked really good going against Buffalo. Again, the preseason. That's why when I talk about Shedeur here in a little bit, I'm also going to mention it's just the preseason. It's a lot different than the regular season. They look good. Again, but you have like three good quarterbacks. I mean, Winston, Wilson, and Dart. Well, I don't know as much about Dart. Dart's only played one preseason game. Like, I'm not going to go on and speak if he's good or not. And I'm still not the highest guy on Jackson Dart. I hope he proves me wrong. If he plays like he did in the preseason game, he's absolutely going to prove me wrong. But, I feel like he was still a little overdrafted. But, Wilson and Winston, when you get with them, Winston's a gunslinger. He's going to throw a ton of touchdowns. You're going to be like, dang, Winston looks good. And then I bet you Winston will go in a couple games and just be like, okay, is this guy even an NFL quarterback anymore? That's been his whole career. Wilson, again, he throws a big rainbow down the sideline or he just throws it 2 yards in front of him for a screen pass. He doesn't like getting hit. Can't say I blame him, but it's not what he was a long time ago at this point. So, again, I think if you're the Giants, you should feel good about your quarterback room right now. I guess go after the first preseason game, or let me just say I understand why you feel good. But, remember, man, it's the preseason. But that is a really good sign to see, though. It is really good. Good for them. I'm looking for a quarterback forever now, even though they've supposedly had one with Daniel Jones and they've had him signed forever now. They've still been looking for a quarterback. So good for you guys. There's some optimism in that quarterback room. I'm not denying that at all. There's definitely optimism in that quarterback room. You guys have quality quarterbacks. Sauce Gardner, or my last one here, I have Sauce Gardner with the cheesehead against Green Bay. Look, you won 30-10. That's great, man. Again, hey, my team will have the Commanders. No matter whether it's preseason, regular season, especially, the first game back in months for our teams, not making the playoffs. You feel good when you see a blowout win. But, dude, you've been one of the better cornerbacks of the 2020s so far. I mean, some may argue he's been the best. There's no reason not to believe that. But really, the cheesehead and stuff coming out after the game. Come on, bro. It's a preseason game. You can just beat them to get in the playoffs or anything. And you're too good of a player, and just experience at this point to be doing that. I don't know. That's just me. Next up, I got. Sorry, I'm looking down, looking at my notes here, and my handwriting kind of sucks. So when I'm looking down for a minute, I'm just looking at my notes. A long list here for you guys. So Roger Goodell's comments last week. I wanted to go over this last week, but I had a lot to talk about last week, so I kind of just wanted to make it its own little thing today. Again, it'll be quick. But Roger Goodell's comments on the NFL about Google and Apple, when he says, we're not competing with the NBA. We're competing with Google and Apple. He's right. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because some people bash him, the diehard NBA fans. And I'm a big time NBA fan. I just go to say I'm a diehard NBA fan. I've been my whole life. I love the NBA, but there's no doubt the NBA is lacking right now. It's a lackluster league. Like it just is. And the NFL is king right now. It really is. It is miles ahead of the NBA. And again, I get it. If you don't watch the NFL and you just strictly watch the NBA, I get how you feel with comments like that. I completely understand. You don't want to hear that for a league you love that you spend a lot of your life watching. Again, the diehards who just watch the NBA. I watch the NFL and the NBA a ton. I watch the NFL more than the NBA anymore because the regular season of the NBA is just not fun to watch anymore at all, especially with the play-in tournament. Certain teams are going to make the playoffs, and the teams who make the play-in, besides the Miami Heat, they don't really do anything. I think the whole structure of the league is very weird right now. Between the in-season tournament, then the play-in tournament, which has not been popular in the league. I don't like it. I'd rather them go back to just the playoffs alone. I'm really not a fan of the play-in tournament at all. Again, Adam Silver is obsessed with tournament-style play in the NBA. That's just again, I'm not saying there's a problem with tournaments. Like, I think especially for All-Star Weekend and stuff, it's cool for certain things. People have been begging for a 1v1 tournament in the NBA for years, like literally years. I don't really think that'd work because then you'd have Curry going against, I don't know, Jokic or Embiid, whatever it is. You'd end up having a big man. But I think they should end up running like a 2-style tournament. You match a big with a guard or whatever it is. Or even like a 3. So you get a guard, a small forward, a center. That would work. I think the NBA, if they did that, everyone would watch that. It would be so fun to watch. But instead we get the in-season tournament, which, again, is a fun idea, but it's not a good idea. And that's what people mistake with stuff like that is the in-season tournament is a fun idea, not a good idea. It's not worked in practice or at all. In execution, it has not worked. Again, I think I said this on the podcast. I think this is like the first week that no one is going to look through LeBron's career and say he won the first ever play-in tournament. Who was saying that? No, most people forgot he even won it. This was like 2 years ago. No one even remembers it. So again, what the NFL is implementing into the game, again, some of it, I think one thing the NFL is not doing right, and that I don't like, is like they're taking defense way out of the game. I don't like, again, I know you're trying to prevent concussion, stuff like that. I get that. The hard hitting helmet to helmet and stuff, again, should always be flagged, penalized, whatever. But in terms of contact, going up for balls, the league, especially with the new dynamic kickoff rule, the league wants it to be offensive heavy. They want people to be constantly watching high-scoring games. You're going to see a lot of players fatigued with that, I think. But then again, you're probably going to see more injury that way because the players are fatigued. Their muscles are cramping, whatever it is. But at the same time, it does make it more exciting to watch, but at the same time, it can make it brutal to watch with all the flags. It feels like there's just flags every other play. It feels like if you throw the ball 30 yards down the field and the corner puts his pinky on the arm, even the corner's looking at the ref waiting for a flag. I think they need to address that because then it's kind of unbearable to watch sometimes. And the NFL has flaws too. Every sport has its flaws. I'm not just trying to, dog on the NBA, but the NFL, in terms of not having a draft lottery, If the NBA didn't have a draft lottery, that would be massive in moving forward for that league. You'd get, the markets like, let me think, the Hornets, teams that have been terrible for a long time, the DC, the Wizards. You would have those teams watch more if they were at the top of the draft. But those teams don't draft top because you're having Dallas, you're having good teams draft number 1 overall, and that kills your smaller markets. Trust me, no one in DC is watching Wizards basketball consistently. 82 games a year. Unless you're a freaking diehard. You are a diehard Wizards fan, which is far and few, whatever. You're not watching all 82 games. That's the problem the NBA has. And again, why the NFL? It's true. Why they're competing with Apple, Google, whatever it is. Everyone, or if you're even a half decent fan, you're a half interested fan. Let me say that. You're not a diehard. You're going to watch just about every game because every game counts. The NBA, your team's out of it by week 1. If your team is out of it by the first week, and the teams like the Saints feel like that too. The fans know they're out by week 2 or 3, but you're watching for your draft pick, next year. Even when you do get wins, they still feel good. Win or loss for a bad team in the NBA, you don't care. You don't care. They've made the regular season just not relevant at all in the NBA. That's what kills it. The playoffs, this was some of the least viewership in the NBA Finals in a long time, just all year. The Luka trade again, I think that had something to do with, the uppers up there at Silver. They know. Cooper Flag, all of a sudden, they have the number 1 overall pick. No organization is trading Luka Doncic. They're trying to get their viewership back. Again, it worked for a little bit, but they get knocked out, the first round? I don't know. It's just, the NFL is absolutely king. It towers over the NBA. The NBA is absolutely not competing with the NFL as of 2025 right now. Not saying it can't ever again, but they've got to figure out something. Whether it's the All-Star game, making regular seasons relevant. One big step, I said, is taking out the draft lottery in the NBA. You start seeing a lot of your smaller markets watching a ton. That's when the Wizards or the Jazz and Cooper Flag. You know what? People would still watch Dallas games because Dallas has a great team. But no one's going to watch DC or Utah because their team sucks still. Well, while they may be a little bit better, they're still going to suck going into this year. But imagine if they had Cooper Flag and well, I guess the Jazz do have Ace Bailey, but, whatever. DC just alone had Cooper Flag. You'd have a ton of DC fans watching again. No, nothing against Trey Johnson. I think he's a good player. The player the Wizards draft team, Cooper Flag, though. Next topic. Should Shedeur Sanders start for the Browns this upcoming season after this week's performance? That's more up to the organization, obviously. It's not up to me, but it's more of, I feel like the Browns have spited Shedeur Sanders a lot coming into this year. You've seen the way he played out there and his numbers in camp and stuff like that. Shedeur Sanders ain't a 4th-string quarterback. He is not a 4th-string quarterback. And it's nothing against Dylan Gabriel, Pickett, Flacco, even. He's the best quarterback on that roster. I think any other NFL GM agrees. Again, I know people are going to be like, well, if they all agreed, how come they didn't draft Shedeur Sanders? They have the same problem. They didn't like his attitude going into meetings, stuff like that. Again, I think a lot of them are afraid too of Deion taking the head coaching job if they have a bad couple of years. They know Deion's be right there for that coaching job, and teams would honestly take him. You're telling me Browns fans, even though they've had some playoff years and stuff like that, even a win under him, are still chanting for Stefanski to be out of there a lot of the times. They do not like him and his offensive play calling. You're telling me Shedeur? I mean, honestly, Stefanski can say what he wants. He doesn't want him playing because he knows Deion's coming for his job. Deion could say what he wants. If he were to get offered an NFL job to coach Shedeur Sanders, he'd be there in 2 seconds. He'd be on the first flight to Cleveland. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. We all know that. It's just more or less, the moral of the Cleveland Browns. Do they still want to spice Shedeur Sanders, and is Kevin Stefanski, knowing that if they don't have a good year and Shedeur starts, he plays good, and the Browns are not good, that they're going to be chanting for Deion. If Shedeur goes out and tosses 25 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and he looks good, they're going to boost Stefanski out of the building. That's why he's the 4th-string quarterback. It goes deeper than just the talent. We know he's talented. He was going to maybe be the first overall pick in the draft. Apparently the Titans were pretty set on Cam Ward. But I think a lot of that had to do with the interview as well. I mean, Shedeur brings a lot to an organization. Hype. He's a cocky guy. I'm not saying he ain't. But respectfully, so he's a good quarterback, and he comes from Deion and stuff. You're talking about Deion ain't a cocky guy. He's one of the more well-known athletes of all time. He comes from one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen across multiple sports. So, of course, he's a little cocky, respectfully so. He proves it out there with his play. If he sucked and was just a bad teammate, but he's not a bad teammate, and again, it comes down to people don't like him because of Deion too. They can say what they want. They don't. A lot of people, I'm not going to say a lot of people, but people don't like Deion Sanders because of his attitude. Again, the cockiness. They don't like cocky people who are successful people. They do not like it. Again, an example, Shedeur and Travis Hunter had their jerseys retired at Colorado. No one had a problem with Travis Hunter, but they had a problem with Shedeur Sanders. Dude, Shedeur's stats at Colorado in 2023, 27 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He had 3,200 yards passing. Brought them back to some sort of relevancy again. While their record may not have been the best, Colorado wasn't even talked about. And they were actually not bad for some games there. Then in 2024, he had 37 touchdowns to 10 picks, 4,100 yards. And again, they were talked about as a top team. They were ranked for a while. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Even in 2023, I think they were ranked for a little bit. That's crazy, man. Shedeur deserves credit. And again, like I said, they don't like him because of his attitude. And then he made the one song. If you know, you know. But I think at some point it's going to get to the point in that building where they had no choice but to start him. I think Flacco may play a decent couple of games, but Flacco with the Colts last year wasn't good either. He played good when he came in for, again, a game or two. Then he was benched. He sucked. I mean, they were really bad. And I mean, he had that one season with the Browns a couple of years ago. And again, he comes in, he shows flashes. He's gonna show flashes. He's just a veteran guy who's had a really good career, and he's a gunslinger. He has nothing to lose. He's gonna go out there and just gunsling that ball. He's gonna make plays and push it down the field, but then he's gonna make a lot of boneheaded mistakes. So Joe Flacco is. Pickett is Kenny Pickett. He's not better than Shedeur Sanders. Dylan Gabriel, we don't really know a lot about him, but I know he took Oregon on the number 1 seed last year. But I don't know. I think they're going to get to a point where they're going to have to start him because it's going to get ugly in that building. So, and especially because in the preseason game, he was 14 for 23. His first couple drives were a little off. He's nervous as hell out there. Again, who wouldn't be? All the pressure on him for a 4th-round pick when he knows he shouldn't have been a 4th-round pick. And that organization and everything is just immense for him. I mean, off the charts. So he already has to deal with that. And, but you know what? After the first couple drives, he shook off the nerves. He looked great. His touchdown passes were incredible. And if you argue that, then you just literally cannot stand the man. That's all I got to say. Because those touchdown passes, yeah, were incredible. Again, preseason, I hold him to the same standard, as all the other players I just talked about a couple minutes ago with Jackson Dart and those guys with it's just preseason, and again, the same goes for Shedeur. It's just preseason. But again, he's talented. He's showing it. Jackson Dart showed he has talent. He can play a little bit. So we see that. So I think he'll start at some point throughout the season. They don't have a choice. The fans are going to be out there with pitchforks and torches if they don't start him at some point. Next topic. Why is Amari Cooper not signed anywhere yet? This is one that's intrigued me and kind of why I wanted to talk about it is because you look at him, especially with Keenan Allen getting signed last week and stuff like that. A lot of these guys, while there is still really good free agents out there or big name free agents out there, in terms of receivers, teams are always looking for receivers. Why isn't no one signed Amari Cooper? When he's 31 years old, his drop in production over the last couple of years, we seen with Buffalo last year, he wasn't great. He's dealt with some injuries and stuff like that. But again, even still though, he's only 31 years old, which is getting older for a receiver. A lot of teams are looking for receivers. I think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I want to be completely honest with you. I could so see Amari Cooper in a Steelers jersey. I think the Steelers are actively trying to get Terry McLaurin at the moment. But I don't think they are. I think the Commanders are going to keep Terry McLaurin. Again, after the Patriots and Commanders game last week, they're seeing how many drops the receivers had. They do not have a soul to replace Terry McLaurin back there. Not a soul to even get half the production Terry McLaurin gets in that receiving room. They don't have a choice but to re-sign him. So that's why I say I can see Amari Cooper going to Pittsburgh. He's going to go to a contending team, a team looking to get in a playoff spot. He's not going to go to New Orleans or Tennessee or wherever. Maybe he could go to Tennessee. I don't know. Tennessee has some magic on getting receivers, no matter who it is in their prime or what. Julio, D-Hop, Ridley, they get everybody down there. So I'm not necessarily going to take Tennessee out of the equation, but yeah, a lot of people still question Amari Cooper. Again, he's had some drop in production the last couple of years. I think maybe you could, squeeze some juice out of him still. It's going to be a good receiver no matter where he goes. I think he'll bring some sort of value. There's been talks about him reuniting with Dallas. Again, Ezekiel Elliott reuniting with Dallas last year was not on my big go card, but it was on there. Or I guess he re-signed. That's what I mean. So, my top landing spots for Amari Cooper as of August 11th. Pittsburgh. I think New England could be one of them. I don't think they're going to. Kansas City is always there. Dallas. I think the Commanders could maybe be on that equation as well. So we'll see. He's going to go to a playoff contending team. There's no doubt about it. And my last thing today, it's not really, I guess it's a topic, but, any suggestions you guys have for me here on the podcast, let me know. Whether, again, I talked about earlier on the podcast, a background. Again, I'm working my best. Whether you guys would just rather see a complete backdrop and not even any portraits, anything like that, let me know. I am working on having an intro to all my videos. It's going to be the same intro, saying the basic stuff, like, comment, subscribe. I do daily. I'm probably going to have that in by next week. I was maybe planning on having it in by the end of this week, but I'd rather kind of test run it with some videos first and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to have an intro for all my videos soon. But again, also too, I kind of like just having, a different intro every day into every video because every day is different. I don't know. I get to tell you guys, well, I guess I could after the intro, then tell you guys about my, whatever it is, my morning, whatever it is. So it's not that I can't do that anymore, but I'm going to add an intro to my videos. Let me know how you guys like that when it comes into the videos here in the next week or two. Whatever it is, whether you have the lighting, whatever, any suggestions at all, thumbnails, anything, let me know in the comments. Honest criticism, whether it's praise, you're like, honestly, And if there's any suggestion, I don't really have any. You're killing it back there. Any comment you guys have at all, I love to hear it. I want to hear it. And let me know, because again, I'm always looking to improve on the podcast here. And yeah, and that's it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Again, episode 16. We are in week 4 of the podcast here. Your guys' support has been tremendous. We've reached over 70 subscribers. I'd love to have 100 subscribers by next week. So, again, if you're not subscribed on the channel, make sure to subscribe here. I post daily. And yeah, and again, why not Wednesdays as well? Fire in those DMs to my social medias. Talk of the town _pod. Fire in DMs, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram. I answer your questions every single Wednesday. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning out to the pod today. And I will see you guys tomorrow.